Good afternoon, folks, and thank you for tuning in. This is Jackie McKetton, and I am the host of the LGBTQ TCRA show, Civil Rights Agenda. And we have a guest today, one of the candidates for governor, Senator Dan Biss. Senator, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Glad to be here.
Okay. I was just telling Senator Biss, I've asked Mr. Pritzker a couple times and Mr. Kennedy to come on. I've gotten no response. So we are very, very, very happy to have Senator Biss with us. To let everybody know, this is an interactive show, and you can call us at 312-738-1060. Okay? You can call and ask questions, comments, but we would like them to be kind of short if possible so we get more people in. Okay? So first thing, we don't get a lot of opportunity to hear from the candidates regarding LGBT issues. And that leads me to believe that there's a lot of there's a lot of LGBTs, transgenders especially, that probably don't even vote. Okay, which is one reason I think we're in trouble with the White House, because we just don't get anybody out. So I have some questions I would like to ask. Is there anything, as we lead up, is there anything that you would like to say specifically to the audience?
Well, thank you for asking, Jackie. I am proud of my pro-LGBTQ record, and I'm proud that I'm going to be the most pro-LGBT governor in the country, the most pro-LGBT governor in the history of the country. And my running mate, Letisa Wallace, and I have laid out a strong, bold agenda around civil rights and economic justice for the LGBTQ community. And I think this is an important moment with Donald Trump behaving the way he is, with the assault on transgender people, especially coming from the White House. Let's use the state government as that bulwark, that first line of defense. And I think that we need a governor who is going to be not just on board, but really leading the fight to make sure that Illinois is truly a place where civil rights for all are respected in the broadest possible sense.
Right. And, the concern, Illinois and California are probably the two best states for LGBT equality and rights and so on, because we passed in 2005 the updated Equal Rights Amendment to include gender identity and sexual orientation. So the state has always been very good towards, but things like Donald Trump rescinding all of Obama's initiatives and so on and so forth. And there is always still, regardless of what we have at this point, there is still always challenges from the Republican side to try and get things through, like conversion therapy and the washroom issue and stuff like that. So that's why I wanted to get some candidates on to talk about these things and see where they stood. You brought up an interesting thing that I was going to ask later on, quite frankly. We unfortunately have, all of our neighbor states are all, especially Indiana, are totally anti-LGBT. Okay? My question would be, number one, how do you think, as governor, you could influence or sway their, or at least set up a rapport with them? Because I know Indiana, they're just hammered over there. And I know Indiana is not your concern, but it's like it's like there are 30 states. I don't know if you're aware of this. There are 30 out of our 50 states that have not passed any legislation, which means 60% of our states still are anti-LGBT, especially trans.
You mean when it comes to, for example, employment discrimination? Right.
Those 30 states, you
Yeah.
can be fired just
right.
for being transgender
right.
regardless. Yeah.
That's right. No, it's tragic. So you're asking what I could do to help other states pass better laws, or are you asking what I could do to help the LGBTQ communities in other states, either by creating examples in Illinois or helping them in some other way?
Do you think it would be that difficult to establish a rapport? I mean, giving your support, okay, do you think, how difficult do you think it would be to establish a rapport about those issues
With
with the
folks in
other states? Yeah.
Well, I think that Illinois is a large state and kind of the financial and cultural capital of the Midwest. And
Right.
so we have real leadership potential. We can bring other states along. And if you look at the backlash that states like Indiana and North Carolina have experienced as a result of their really ugly anti-LGBT and anti-transgender laws, that's demonstrated a real economic risk they're exposing themselves to. So now, if Illinois, by virtue of making itself the most LGBT-friendly state in the country, starts to do better economically, starts to attract more people to come here in search of our good civil rights laws, starts to attract companies here that don't want to be seen as identified with states that have awful laws or that lack strong laws, I think that's going to start to be the most powerful incentive these other states can see, because if they find that their economic health is at risk because of their bigoted policies, I think that's the way to get them to change their policies. You notice that chambers of commerce, which are not ordinarily my closest political allies, chambers of commerce were fighting against these anti-transgender laws in other states, not because they had a view on the underlying issue,
Right.
because they knew it was bad for business. And
Well,
so,
that's right, because when North Carolina decided it was going to make a big to-do about the bathroom issue,
yeah,
you know, the NCAA and eBay and a whole bunch of companies just decided not to do any business there. They lost a lot of money.
that's right. And so
Yeah.
I think likelier than me as the Illinois governor being able to one by one persuade Indiana legislators to do a certain thing, we can just show them, hey guys, this is harmful to you economically, and we are going to be a much more economically strong place than you because of our pro-LGBT laws, and that can be a strong incentive for them to shape up their act.
Right. And there are companies out there that are very inclusive. And that's what we got to get across to everybody out there, and even the general public, that, hey, you know, we're no different than they are.
That's right.
You know.
That's right.
Okay? Just because I decide, you know, that I'm not happy as I was born necessarily, doesn't make me anything different than anybody else. You know, I have the same organs, I bleed the same color of blood, so on and so forth. It's like, you know, I'm still the same person.
Yeah. That a human being is a human being.
Right.
A human being is a human being.
Right.
That's what matters.
Exactly.
Everything else is secondary.
Exactly. And we're all part of the same family, a huge family of human beings.
That's right.
Huh? Okay, right now, state of Illinois is, I guess, in a legislative argument regarding birth certificates, as far as, and I know some states that won't change birth certificates. Kansas, I know, won't. Even if you've had the operation, they won't have it. And what our community is trying to say is, regardless of what the birth certificate says, if we feel that we are somebody or something different, then we should be able to change our birth certificate, because it has implications when you're talking about trying to get a passport,
Yeah, of course.
you know, or you're trying to get, you know, some other identification. And I think right now it's kind of stalled. Nobody wants to make a decision on whether or not birth certificates can be changed.
Well, we were able to pass a law that is a big step in the right direction. Decades ago, when, let's be honest, our understanding about what it meant to be transgender was much more primitive than it now is, Illinois passed what was then viewed as a pretty progressive law that allowed someone's gender marker on their birth certificate to be changed if they had sex reassignment surgery.
Right.
What we now, of course, know is that that's none of the state's business, and that's not the measure. And so we were able to pass legislation just this past spring that says that you can have your gender marker changed on your birth certificate based upon your gender identity, not based upon the surgery that you may or may not have had. And that was a tough bill to pass, I'm not going to lie to you. We had a lot of work to do to educate members of the General Assembly, but we got that bill passed, and that bill is now law. What I would say, though, is we're not done. What I would say is that all government documents need to have that same basic freedom. And I would say one other thing. I don't think we should have government documents in the state of Illinois that say you have to check a box male or female. There are a lot of gender nonconforming
Right,
people. There are a
right.
lot of gender fluid people.
Right.
There are a lot of people who, when called upon to buy a plane ticket and obligated to check M or F,
Right.
don't really have a box that fits for them.
Right. Where do I check it?
That's exactly right. And what I think that our government is doing by putting those two choices and two choices only on government documents is telling people who don't fit in one of those two boxes, you're not equal. You're not one of us.
Right.
You're not wanted
Exactly.
here. And my goodness, what could be a worse signal for us to send our own people? So I think we've got a lot of work left to do in terms of government documents and gender markers and so forth. But that bill we passed this past spring was a good step forward and will really help people.
Exactly. Well, I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, it's and the sad part is even in Illinois, quite frankly, it can depend on the government entity as to whether or not, and I don't think that's right. For example. You know, you're going to have a downstate county where the recorder refuses to make any changes just because of their religious beliefs, which actually have nothing to do with our lives.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Which, you know, and that's a big contention amongst our community is, you know, why we as a community are not trying to tell other people how to live their lives.
Exactly, and there's this really dangerous notion out there that some people hold that somehow religious liberty and religious freedom, which we do believe in and should believe in and must cherish, some people think that somehow those principles allow someone based on their own beliefs to interfere with somebody else's identity.
Exactly.
And that's a terrible mistake. That's not what religion is about, and that's certainly not what religious freedom embedded in our Constitution has anything to do with.
I agree wholeheartedly. But that's a really tough thing. How do we get people to understand that?
You know, I think the great strength, the unique strength, frankly, of the LGBTQ movement and the fight for LGBTQ equality has been that anybody, black or white, rich or poor, powerful or weak, anybody can have an LGBTQ child
Oh, sure.
or sibling. And that has really confronted a lot of people who might have initially had some biases and or initially had some instinctive rejection of the rights or dignity of LGBTQ people,
Right.
to instead say, wait a second, now this is my child we're talking about. This is my sibling we're talking about. This is my neighbor we're talking about. And that's very, very powerful. The movement of enormously brave people who began coming out in a time that it was not always safe to come out.
Oh, right.
And therefore educated all the people around them about what it meant to be honest about your own identity. That's really changed a lot. The lesson that I think we unfortunately need to absorb here in 2018 is we're not done yet. I know a lot of people who say they've never met a transgender person. Of course they have. Of course they have.
They just didn't
but they
know.
don't realize it. They don't realize it. And unfortunately, that problem's only going to be solved when we have enough openness, enough freedom, enough safety that people in the transgender community are comfortable being open, being out about their identity.
Right.
And therefore, in addition to being people and living their own lives, also being educators for everyone else to bring people along on this civil rights journey.
That's one thing I'm trying to do because I agree. A lot of people don't realize that there were transgenders that were acknowledged as far back as 3,000 years ago. The Hindu religion actually thought that, and held transgenders in high esteem and used them a lot for consulting because they thought, here's somebody that can actually see both sides of a situation and can, work on it without being, the male or the female version or that type of thing. The American Indian, acknowledged it. So we've been around a long time, a long, long time. We just haven't had any way to educate people.
Yeah.
And that's another. In 2011, I had another TV show. It was an internet TV show. In 2011, I talked about this a lot. Canada, the whole country, put out, or the government put out a directive to all of the schools in Canada saying that LGBT should be taught in the sex ed classes to all of the kids.
Yeah.
Okay? Unfortunately, that lasted maybe a week or less. And the story was that they were getting too many people. And there was one case in particular, one lady called in and said, "You got to stop doing this. You can't do this." Why? Well, my daughter is totally confused. The point being that, unfortunately, the government didn't think to say, maybe there's a reason she's confused. Maybe this is bringing up questions that she's had in her mind all along. Okay? I have had several therapists on my other show and on this show as well, and they all agree on one thing, and that is anywhere from three to five people out of every 100 have gender dysphoria or gender questions. Now, that doesn't mean they all act on them, okay? But that's out there. And there's scientific research that suggests that at the age of 4 and 5, we know that our mind is not in conjunction with the physiological makeup. Yeah. Okay? So if you stop and think about 3 to 5%, I'm sorry, 3 to 5 out of every 100, 3 to 5% of our entire population, the world population, actually has gender identity questions, concerns, and so on. Okay? But we can't get that taught. And I don't know how we teach that. Canada tried to get it taught, and then they got, the government got stoned and they backed off.
I think it's just one step at a time. It's, when you look at the way the transgender community was treated even a decade ago, much less 30 years ago,
All right.
We've come a long way. We're nowhere close to where we have to be, but we've come a long way. And every step that normalizes, every step that brings transgender people out into the open, every step where we get to jointly as a community demonstrate to people who would seek to engage in prejudice, hey, you don't get to do that. That's not something that we accept in our society any longer. Every time we take one of those steps, we get further down the path. But I don't want to pretend otherwise. We've got a lot of work left to do. We've got a lot of work left to do.
How do we get people to stop and think about their prejudices?
I think we need to surprise people. I think when people are going about their lives and seeing what they expected to happen continue to happen, then they don't question their own prejudices. But that's why I mentioned earlier how important it is that anybody can have a transgender child, because that brings us into a... We have a caller? You want to bring in? Okay.
Hello, caller.
Yes, hello. How are you doing today?
How are you? Do you have a question?
Hello, future Senator. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. And how you doing there, Jackie?
I'm doing fine.
There, you guys are looking great today.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a few comments. You people come a long way, Jackie, a real long way. And as far as educating people about your situation, I think you ought to keep it on the download. You are what you are today. You're dressed the way you are. Nobody needs to know your business. You don't have to walk around town telling who you are, what you are. You know what you're in your heart. You have other friends that are like you. The whole community doesn't even notice that anymore. Don't bring it to people's attention. And what are you going to do to protect these people? What are you going to do to give these people some kind of rights with their washroom situation, if they have any crimes committed on them? What are you going to do to protect them, Senator? And also, what are you going to do to protect the whole city of Chicago? We're really up in an uproar over here. We got all kinds of problems going on. But let's start with one problem at a time, one step at a foot, 1 foot at a time makes you go 1,000 miles. Let's start with the problem that you got on TV today for my Jackie over there and for you. And when it comes time for voting, I keep seeing what you're saying, and because there's a lot of people running, they're all on CAN TV, promoting yourselves. I hope if people vote for you, you keep the promises that you, because a lot of senators, a lot of governors, a lot of aldermen. This is Chicago, sir. Am I right?
Well, we're recording in Chicago right now, and I'm running for
That's
governor of the
right.
whole state of Illinois.
So good luck to you. If I see you on the, are you there?
Yes, we're still here.
Right. If I see you on the ballot, I'll give you a shout out for you. I'm in the 41st Ward. I vote. I have my voter's registration card. And if I could go vote for Jackie, I'd vote for Jackie too. Might as well put her on the ballot for something. But anyhow,
I would love to.
That's my comment for the day. And you all have a nice day, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I agree with her on a lot of what she said. Unfortunately, well, I don't know what I'd say unfortunately, that's probably not the way. I do feel though that our community needs some activism. And people need to see, and one of the things I've been asking the community to do, quite frankly now, in addition to the show, I am also a Girl Scout leader. I'm also vice commander of an American Legion post. I am a advisory board member for Governor State University. There's something else that I'm forgetting. Oh, I know, I've got a small business of my own. But anyway, I'm trying to get involved in areas where you might think that transgenders are not that accepted. And what I'm trying to get the other transgenders to do, number one, voting. They got to get out and vote. They can't complain on Facebook about what happened if they're not out there voting. Nor can anybody else. Okay? But I do think some activism is necessary. Okay? Just like the women marched, well, 2 times now, and showed a significant, voice. That's something our community has to do. And that's something I've been trying to do, is find a way. I would like to do a 1 million trans march on Washington, D.C., is what I would like to do. I mean, that would be. But do you think that would serve a purpose or make it? Because I really think that most people don't realize how many of us exist.
Well, first of all, I think it would. And second of all, I would say I'm not going to tell you what you should do. It's not my position to instruct you on how to advocate for yourself or for your community. What I would say is that when transgender people want to be private about their identity, that's their right.
Oh, sure.
And when transgender people want to be public and out and loud and proud about their identity and use that pride as a tool to educate others, that's their right as well. And what we need is a society where everyone feels safe making the decision that's right for them. And unfortunately, we don't have that society yet.
That's
I do
true.
want to answer one part of the caller's question, though, if you don't mind, because she asked a really important question, which is, hey, Daniel, what are you going to do to protect transgender people in the state of Illinois? You know the statistics about the disparate impact of the way the criminal justice system is applied, domestic violence, housing challenges,
Right,
healthcare access.
right.
So what are you going to do? Let me start here. The Illinois Constitution ought to have a protection in it based upon sexual orientation and gender identity. And what that would do, among other things, is mean that we wouldn't have to fight with 800 different school districts one at a time about bathrooms. There would be a constitutional right for people in Illinois to use public accommodations that match their gender identity.
The
Whether
issue
it's-
in Palatine is absolutely disgusting.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. And listen, the good news is the school board elections happened the right way. And so when the community came together and had this debate, the right side won. But man, some of the conversations that happened before were really ugly and really disgusting.
I wasn't there, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's really awful. We also need to make sure that access to healthcare and housing, access to all healthcare, including mental health services, is truly equal, irrespective of sexual orientation or gender identity. Healthcare is a right, not a privilege, not an option, in my opinion, unlike the other folks running for governor. And I think we need to make sure that that access is truly universal. We have to stop the kind of discrimination that exists in housing based on things like income source, because as we know, the epidemic of homelessness among LGBTQ youth is unacceptable.
60% right now, I think it is.
There's a lot that we need to do and a lot that we can do, and I'm committed to both those basic core civil rights efforts, along, for example, putting in a constitutional provision, and also economic justice for the LGBTQ community.
And that's what we need. I mean, and like I say, one thing is, and a constitutional thing is better than a law passed, because it's there now. It's part of the original, the book. And but you're right. I mean, there are places that they don't care what the equal, the 2005 Equal Rights Amendment says. It's no, I'm not going to bake you a cake because I don't think gay people should get married. Well, then what are you in the business for? Since when can you discriminate on who you service or sell to? So I mean, and that is exactly that is what we need. You're absolutely right, totally. We touched on this a little bit. The bathroom issue. Now, it's not such an issue here in Illinois. I don't think. I haven't experienced it anyway. But with so many states that make it such a, and I've had callers, I've talked about this subject before on the show, and I've had callers come in and say, well, you can't have transgender people in the ladies' bathroom. And one of them was a guy. And I said, well, how do you know that there's a transgender in there? Because you're not supposed to be in there anyway. but how do we solidify, and the constitutional amendment would be absolutely wonderful. But in the meantime, how do we get enforcement of what was passed in 2005?
Well, the employment non-discrimination is really hard to prove. This is a giant challenge we have across our society when it comes to discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, gender, race. It's hard to prove it. And so we need to come together and build up networks of people who talk to each other and tell the truth about what's going on in workplaces. And people are ready to stand up and get involved in lawsuits because that's the best way to enforce the law.
That's true. That's true. And, okay, we're going to have to wrap it up here. First of all, I want to thank you again so much for coming on.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here.
Do you have any last thing or thing that you would like to say to everybody out there.
I'll just repeat, I'm going to be the most pro-LGBTQ governor we've ever had. Visit us at danielbiss.com or facebook.com/danielbiss or twitter.com/danielbiss to learn more and get involved.
Absolutely. And that's, we got to get political, and that's what we have to do. Absolutely. Before we go, a quick reminder that at 6:30 tonight, I will have another show. Our regular show will be at 6:30, and we have a transgender lady is coming on to tell a little bit about her story and her experiences and so on and so forth. So, thank you for tuning in, and thank you for the callers. We appreciate hearing from you. Until 6:30 tonight, and we'll see you then. From all of us here to all of you there. Goodbye.